Podcast. In episode 63, Chris and I are going to cover a slew of trades. The Buffalo Sabres have a new general manager. The Red Wings had quite the road trip. Brandon Bussey in Carolina could be their number one guy. Laurent Brossoit scored a goalie goal in his third game back in the AHL. The New York Islanders, they're starting to be a little bit of a problem. Chris and I are also going to talk about Connor Hellebuck's return and how Winnipeg is playing like they have been prior to his injury, and an NHL star in Connor Bedard. He is out until January. But Chris, I just want to say, how are you doing? Holidays are just around the corner. Very merry time of the year.
I am fantastic. Ready for the holiday season. Ready to kick the feet up tonight, and let's talk about a little bit of this chaos that happened this past week.
It was certainly chaos. That I will just say that. As some jaw-dropping chaos, or appropriately titled Hughes News, because Quinn Hughes was the center of the attention this week. He was traded to the Minnesota Wild. Marco Rossi, Liam Ogren, Zeev Buem, I believe is how you say that. And Buem. I need a pronunciation guide at this point. And there was also a 2026 first-round pick included in the trade, and what is shaping up to be a really good draft class. So it's a good trade for both sides. Minnesota gets a great puck-moving defenseman who can put up points. And Vancouver, they get a lot of assets. They checked off a lot of boxes. A good young prospect in Ogren, good defenseman to replace Hughes and Buem, and you also have a really good 2C or potential second line center in Marco Rossi. Chris, that checks off a lot of boxes, and don't forget about the first round pick, because that's a lot in one trade.
Yeah, I love this trade for both sides. My only thing is, I think this trade personally hurts the Wild a little bit. Yes, they get a superstar defenseman in Quinn Hughes. The question you and I have talked about time and time again, is he going to extend wherever he was traded to? We even had this conversation last week with producer Connor off air, where wherever he goes, is it going to be an extension? And my issue with the trade, though, for the Wild is really you gave up Marco Rossi. It hurts your center depth. Like, you have a great blue line. You have two fantastic goaltenders who we've talked about continuously the last couple of weeks. But honestly, having Kirill Kaprizov, a superstar, but down the middle, you're kind of lacking now. And that, I think, could hurt this team.
Yes, but maybe the Wild are looking at other options right now, because this year and next year, if you keep Quinn Hughes and he walks in free agency, you have two really strong years to build around Kaprizov and Hughes and your strong goaltending. One of the things that doesn't really scream, I don't want to say attractive, but it doesn't scream anything good, is there's no certainty if he is going to sign. However, Quinn Hughes, I don't know if you've seen this scrolling through X or anything, Chris, but Hughes has said it doesn't take a small-witted GM to just look at it and go, I'll trade for him. It's a very tactical move. I just want to say, first and foremost, these trades don't happen every day, especially to the player of Quinn Hughes's caliber. Like, he's not available via trade every day, nor does a team net that kind of player in.
No, absolutely. And the Red Wings were a team that were linked to him, and the possible trade was, obviously a first round, but it sounded like Simone Edvinsson and probably Nate Danielson and Marco Kasper, which Edvinsson being the name for the Red Wings defensively, they said no right away. And again, I go back to with the Wild. Did you even see them as a possibility for this?
I don't think anyone did.
No, not at all. It was the Red Wings. You saw a lot of the Devils. You saw like certain teams pop up here and there, but you never heard about the Wild. And so when I saw breaking Quinn Hughes trade, I was waiting to see for the end. Like, you have, obviously, as it shows up as a notification on your phone, you have to click it. And as it's loading, I'm like, where is he going? Like, I would have seen more if it was Detroit having all the Detroit Riders notifications. But then I see Minnesota. I'm like, where the hell did that come from?
Yeah. And I think it's NHL News on X said is like nobody had an idea that it was going to be Minnesota, but Bill Guerin, props to him. He took a swing and it worked. You have Quinn Hughes for the rest of the season and one more. Maybe he's traded at the trade deadline, similar to what Mikko Rantanen went through, not being sure if he is going to sign. That's also another thing to look at here, because look at what Minnesota gave up for him. The bar is kind of set. So if a team wants him with an extension, that asking price is so much more.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at it from the outside, like as you would be too. What if New Jersey does take that swing? If he were, like, I know obviously that was kind of shut down over the last few days, but if things were to kind of get set in motion, because anything can happen by next year's trade deadline, and I'm not implying anything. What if New Jersey decides, okay, let's take a swing here? Any team could do it.
It's definitely something to watch with him too. Like, they can't extend him until after July 1st. So whatever, it's going to be interesting to see what they do this offseason with him. Like, is it an offseason move even? Maybe not even during this trade deadline next year.
Yeah, and that's for sure. And it feels like the trade deadline came a little bit early this year, Chris, because Quinn Hughes wasn't the only player traded over the last weekend, I'd want to say here. Is Tristan Jarry was traded to the Edmonton Oilers for Stuart Skinner, Brett Kulak, and a second-round pick, I believe it is. And that's,
I believe so.
Yeah. And just checking my notes here. Yes, it was a 2029 second. But that was also kind of like, just, it seems like that one came out of nowhere. We had known for a while, given Edmonton's circumstance and the emotional hug between Picard and Skinner, that maybe that their time together was kind of running short. But there was always that but in there. Was Edmonton going to pull the trigger anytime soon, given cap constraints? And Skinner was on a hot stretch when he was traded. Friday morning, I believe it was, as the news came out that Stuart Skinner, or Edmonton Oilers, are making a couple of moves. Spencer Stastny, which we're going to get into right away, and Tristan Jarry. So it kind of works together. Like, Stastny's supposed to replace Kulak. Just looking at it from what the trade is, Edmonton probably didn't want to give up Kulak, but you bring in Stastny as a good young defenseman, 25, makes your team younger. But Jarry coming in, if he looks good and he performs, does that push Edmonton back to where they want to be in June?
My first gut reaction to this was, I think it was a week ago, I messaged you that there was somebody, I think a different podcast out there, that had tweeted, or some show or something like that tweeted out Jarry to Edmonton was done working on the final details. And
I think that was 2 months or something like that.
Yes, yeah, that's what it was. And I saw Friday afternoon, Elliot replied to that tweet and said, "You had it right, just a couple days off." And to me, the Jarry trade is interesting because last year he was put on waivers. So like, Edmonton could have gotten him last year for nothing. And he's been injured this year. Like we talked about a couple weeks ago, they had Miroshov up, and it was Miroshov and Seelovs. And we had the conversation right then and there that this is your goalie of the future in Miroshov. And the fact that they, in the trade, took back Stuart Skinner was a little surprising to me, where I believe he's off the top of my head, I think he's a free agent after this year. So my assumption is just let Skinner ride this year, have Miroshov come in next year and be the 1A, 1B with Seelovs. But getting Kulak's a huge add for them defensively. And even better with that whole trade is the two are most likely going to face off against each other tomorrow night. So You're going to have Jarry in Edmonton, and you're going to have Skinner most likely in net for Pittsburgh tomorrow night. So it's going to be something to watch. Edmonton, They definitely needed. We talked about they needed an upgrade in goal. Is Jari really an upgrade? We'll see. But as for the Stasny trade, I like that trade for Edmonton because he had. I mean, he was really kind of blocked in Nashville. They were rolling out some games. They were rolling out 11 forward, 7 defensemen, and yeah. Producer Connor, you got something to say?
One big thing to note on the Pittsburgh and the Edmonton trade, they have both moved their goaltenders to a point where they can also trade them again at the trade deadline with retention. So if it doesn't work out, both teams have flexibility.
That is true. There was no retention on either side of that trade to start with. So that is something to watch.
And what if, like, I'm just throwing a what if out here is what if Skinner blows up in Pittsburgh and he's not good? What if Pittsburgh has to waive him and they can't dump him to another team?
Yeah, I mean that's a whole interesting situation with that whole situation in Pittsburgh because, like I said, Miroshov and Seelovs have proven they can be the 1A 1B for that team in the not just the future but this season if needed.
Yeah,
Pittsburgh was in a playoff spot with the two of them while Jari was out, and then Jari does come back and they kind of slip a little bit. I believe entering tonight they are still in a playoff spot, or did they slide out into the Flyers in that top spot in the wild card?
Something like that.
One of those Pennsylvania teams. But like I said, with Stasny, he was just blocked. The move made sense for him, to move to Edmonton. He's an interesting piece. I mean, he's got decent play on the blue line, can help. I'm interested to see how they use him and what they do moving forward, and creates a logjam in Nashville for sure, and they get a draft pick out of it.
But here's the one thing with Nashville that kind of it makes me wonder what they're doing because Nashville needs to get younger. That has been known. I know Elliot Friedman had talked about it, and some other shows that I've listened to lately had mentioned that. If they want to get better, they need to get younger. They have good veteran pieces on the team still, but they need to get younger. You trade a 25-year-old defenseman. That's going to be decently good. The move didn't make sense.
What other defensemen on that team right now, though, if you're looking at it with they're rolling at 11-7, what other defensemen are you moving? There's none that scream anything to me. I don't know if they want to move. Yossi is their captain. They're not moving Yossi.
Well, obviously not.
Are they moving Brady Shea? Maybe, but that's a bigger return, not something whereas where they were running with right now with this 11-7, that Stasny was just blocked. It was just he was a lot of time in Milwaukee, and he made sense to move. I agree that the way he was playing absolutely could have been in their top 4 in the next 2 years, especially if they move contracts throughout the year. But I think at the same time, getting a draft pick helps them get younger at the same time too. They're just a team that we're going to have to watch over the next couple of weeks because obviously these trades came out of nowhere, except for maybe Jari and Skinner. That kind of was seen coming a week before, like I said. But Stasny, Quinn Hughes trade, those came out of really nowhere. And Nashville is certainly a team we talked about. I think we've off air certain names on Nashville's current roster that could certainly surprise us, and there could be a team that we don't even see, and all of a sudden somebody like Steven Stamkos is going to the Devils or something. Something surprising like that we didn't really know. And Nashville is certainly a team to watch with the trade market heating up.
And that's 100% fair. But Chris, I gotta the whole thing in Buffalo today. I know you and I had texted, and we kind of anticipated it given the news that was trickling out. And I'd mentioned to you last night that it was kind of dependent on the Seattle game that happened last night. And taking a look, it was 3-1 final for Buffalo. They did win, but Kevin Adams he still got fired today. And Jarmo Kekalainen is the new general manager with the Buffalo Sabres, and this is going to be a very interesting watch given how Buffalo has performed. They have good pieces, but they're 14-14-4 across 32 games. Go Go ahead.
This is a whole rebuild again. This is what's coming. If you're a Buffalo fan, it's going to be a whole restart, retool from the bottom up. They're going to start moving pieces. And we've mentioned some names, in our conversations that it's just going to blow it up. I think you're going to see, we talked about, I think a couple weeks ago when we talked about Devin Levi, they have a goalie logjam. You're going to see some goalies move. You're going to see star players like Tage Thompson and Alex Tuck moved. It's just like Tuck's name's been out there already that, their teams are interested. I think Edmonton was the one I wrote about the other day that they were linked to Alex Tuck. Tage Thompson's another fun one to watch that could change the league. He goes to somewhere that's in the playoff, like a top 3 spot in the division, adds scoring in the top 6, big change to the whole league. And they have the pieces, and it's funny when we talk about Buffalo, like you see the pieces they've moved already, and you make sure like Jack Eichel, I'm blanking on a couple other names off the top of my head.
Ryan O'Reilly, Sam Reinhart, like the list I can rifle off name after name that has left and won a Stanley Cup or been on really good teams. It's a never-ending list, it feels like.
It's going to be a rebuild, just to blow it up and let's go. And this is the new GM. This is the new voice in the head of everything. And this is going to be a new team.
I don't think it's going to be a full-out rebuild. I think it's going to be a longer retool, shorter rebuild kind of deal. It's not going to be a strip it to the studs like Toronto did when they went and rebuilt. Because
this whole thing is funny to me because we talked about a couple weeks ago, how the whole Atlantic division, we saw it as a flip. All these teams were rebuilding. We saw Detroit, Montreal, Ottawa. And last year we saw Montreal and Ottawa make the playoffs. And this year we're seeing right now Montreal, Detroit are up there. Ottawa is up towards the playoff spot. Buffalo was a team in that conversation that was rebuilding when all these teams were. And now they're almost a step back again. But I agree with you that there will be not blowing it fully up, but a blow up at the same time. But, they're going to be that team, I think, that when the time comes of Detroit, Montreal, and Ottawa getting to that point again, if they do, I mean, very well could not, but if they do, that's when Buffalo takes that leap, and now they're the team in the Atlantic Division.
Yeah, and we saw Buffalo last year at the trade deadline make that trade for bringing in Josh Norris, and they sent out Dylan Cousins. Dylan Cousins was on a very team-friendly contract. He went to Ottawa. Tage Thompson being a 6'6" center, look at what he can do. He's a right shot center who can score goals. I am very confident in saying this, Chris, that if he's on a team that has an elite winger or two with him, he could be a 50, 60 goal scorer. That's with the talent that you can put around him. He's shown that he can score. Buffalo in the stage they're in, he's shown that he can score some seasons and then he'll fall off a cliff when he's given a line to kind of drive. And I'm looking, Chris, I'm looking at teams like Dallas, Minnesota, maybe even Anaheim, who could use a good center because Anaheim, they have a good core going already. We've talked about them. Minnesota with the need for a center, but who do you take away for Tage Thompson? And what's the asking price for Tage Thompson, who has $7.142 million for the next 5 seasons in a very growing, the cap climate's growing. But you also got to look at other teams around the league that maybe they have an abundance of prospects in their system that might not graduate. They might not graduate for 5 seasons. You have to look at teams like this with really hyped up prospects. Now, I'm not saying anything here, Chris, but this is a very exciting time in Buffalo. And producer Connor put it in the chat not too long ago. Jarmo Kekalainen's known for big trades. He is not one to shy away from these things. Maybe we're going to see Jarmo Kekalainen of old. I'm just saying that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the first domino to fall, it has to be Tage Thompson or Alex Tuck. Like that to me screams like it's coming and it's coming soon.
I have one name that could also be on the top of that list. Bowen Byram. Because he bridged in the summer. He bridged in the offseason. 2 years, 6.25. Can play either side defensively. But there's so many this team, there's so many good pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Buffalo has 5 good defensemen, arguably. I look at their defense on the left side specifically. You have Deline, Power, and Samuelson. On the right side, Byram, Timmins, Kesselring, Bryson, Metza. Like they have a decent amount of defensemen.
Yep.
I don't know what the price would be for Byram. It would be obviously be a lot lower to Tage Thompson or Alex Tuck, but the price is still there.
Mm-hmm.
So here we are. There's 3 big names right off the bat. I'm not sure who goes first, but like you said, there's 3 big swings that can be had right away, and maybe that also pushes Buffalo in the right direction because Kekalainen in Columbus, before he did get fired, there was something there. It was a pretty good build to things, and then the Columbus we see now is kind of the vision I think Kekalainen had. So here we are, Chris.
The chaos of the Buffalo Sabres.
Oh, it's going to be chaotic, and I feel like Buffalo is a team we're going to talk a lot about in the next month or two.
Absolutely.
And especially trade deadline time.
Listen, I would love Bowen Byram and the Red Wings.
Oh yeah. I feel like you're gonna say this with everyone, but hey, it's a very fair thing to say. There's a lot of good pieces in Buffalo, goaltending wise too. I'm just saying that again, reiterating what you said. But speaking of the Detroit Red Wings, Chris, their road trip.
What a road trip it was. I mean, it was beautiful. They needed that. I think it boosted them personally, especially seeing John Gibson. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. John Gibson is a streaky goalie. I think I even mentioned on Benders that the question with him is always that he's always been streaky. When does that streak occur? And happening in December, I think it's kind of what I said. Needs to happen December, January, hits the break, which might be beneficial to him. He comes back and he continues his stretch. But the fact that he posted 2 shutouts in the past week, he shut out the Blackhawks 4-0 on Saturday, and then he shut out, waiting to pull it up, the Canucks on Monday. So Blackhawks is not a bad shutout. We'll get to it a little bit. Yes, they were out Connor Bedard. Canucks, I mean, at the time they had Quinn Hughes. I was hoping at the time Detroit was leaving Vancouver with Quinn Hughes on the roster. But overall, not a bad trip. I mean, yes, you lost to the Oilers. You beat the bad teams in the Pacific Division that you faced. You took care of that. You know, a tough loss to Columbus in the shootout, but they came back in that game. I mean, they had a fight. You know, they were down, I believe it was 3-1 at one point. I'm trying to pull it up. It was 3-1 at one point. They scored 2 more goals to make it 3-3, and then the Blue Jackets took a 4-3 lead, and then did I read that right? Yeah. Then they ended up scoring 2 more goals, took a lead. They gave it right back up as Fantilli scored, and then they lost in a shootout. It's a game you shouldn't have gotten points in. And they end up coming away, scoring goals. They get points. Or they came back, took the lead. Like, realistically, after the first 2 periods, they'll think, okay, this game's done. You're not going to get points. And then the third period, they came right out. They took the lead. Columbus fought right back with a minute and a half left, scored a goal, and then you go to a shootout. So you came out of there with 9 out of, I believe, did I do the math right? No, 9 out of 12 points. Not a bad road trip. Now you're home, and we'll get to them in a little bit, but now you get to face the Islanders who have absolutely annihilated you this season. You got to come out away with something there. And then on Wednesday, you have a back-to-back. You're facing Utah. And Utah's also have a back-to-back. I believe they have the Bruins tomorrow night in Boston, and then they go to Detroit. So you got to find a way at least to come away with hopefully 3 points. But you're in a playoff spot. You're tied with the Lightning for the top spot in the Atlantic Division. If you asked me that when we talked about in or out a couple weeks ago, I probably would have said they were out. Right now, the way they're playing, if this is the team that continues down the stretch, I think they're in. And I don't know if it's a wild card spot or in the top 3 in the Atlantic, but You got two solid goalies in Talbot and Gibson. The defense looks decent. And then the offense, I mean, you lost Patrick Kane for back-to-back games. They just called up John Leonard, who leads the AHL in goals this season, who was a force last year for the Checkers. Going to be exciting to watch tomorrow night and see what he can do. And they apparently, from what Todd McClellan said today, he's playing on the second line. So he's sliding right into Kane's spot, playing with Kopp and DeBrincat tomorrow night. So expect some plays to be made there. I'm hoping this team can continue their stretch, but need the goalies to keep doing what they're doing and need the offense to produce. They're scoring on the bottom six. I mean, JVR was on a hot stretch for a while there. But I like to see some other names. Like we haven't seen Michael Rasmussen pop up in a bit. JT Compher hasn't really popped up much in a bit. Got to get some more bottom six scoring. But what they've done as of late, it's nice to not see it all relied on Larkin, DeBrincat, and Raymond.
Yeah. I know another team that has a bottom six scoring problem, but we'll get into them later. I watched a couple of games, or not a couple. I watched a few games in a bar with my buddies over the weekend, and we're shooting pool, watching these games. And one of them it was a Detroit game, and just seeing the difference in how their top two lines play and their bottom two play, it's kind of staggering because maybe I'm wrong with this, Chris, and correct me if I am, but it feels like that bottom six mix is just kind of lost when it comes to driving the net and trying to generate scoring chances. Whereas the top six, there's more of a chemistry and more of a plan when they drive the net and get pucks in deep.
I would say yes on the bottom, on the fourth line. The third line, depending upon what the combo is, if it's Danielson and Casper, I feel like they have a little bit more chemistry where they do drive the net and you see a little bit more of that. But they've been mixing and matching. I mean, for a while this season, you had Patrick Kane on the third line. I mean, they're trying to get that bottom six scoring going, and it hasn't been there until as of this road trip. I believe, what was it? I thought it was like 4 or 5 games after the Bruins game a couple weeks ago that JVR had a goal. But he's on the line on the fourth line with Rasmussen and Compher. And that's what I mean. You got to go see those other two guys put the puck in the net. It can't be just JVR driving your bottom six.
Yeah, and we're going to get into Winnipeg later, but maybe defensively, their defensemen might start producing more than they typically do because at bottom six, there's a bit of a gap and a disconnect.
Yeah, I'm looking right now, just like seeing defensive scoring too has been nice. Like I remember watching the Columbus game, not the most recent one, but one before, where you saw, I think they won it 4-3 or 5-4 in overtime, and 3 of the 5 goals, I believe, were scored by defensemen. I think Seider had 2 and Sherratt had 1. Like it's just nice to see scoring from somewhere else. Like you're used to seeing Larkin, Raymond, DeBrincat, for the most part Kane, except as of late, but it's just nice to see different names pop up for a goal. And like ASP, and you have Edvinsson, who had an injury the other night. It was nice to see him at least come back and play. That they need to stay healthy. That is huge. I mean, your former Winnipeg Jet player, Mason Appleton's now currently on the IR. You're not going to have Patrick Kane for the next 2 games. That's a tough loss. I'm really, really excited to see John Leonard play. Doing a little bit of coverage of the Checkers last year during the playoffs and seeing what he did during the regular season. I was excited when he signed for the Red Wings this season. Been fantastic in Grand Rapids. I'm a little hesitant on the fact he's playing on the second line. I would have liked to seen some shifting maybe there and see somebody slide up in Casper or Danielson or something like that. But we'll see what he does on the second line. Curious how they, configure the power plays tomorrow night, but I can't wait to watch him play.
Yeah, and there's always a lot of excitement around new players, especially just pickups throughout the year. And him getting his first shot with the Red Wings, maybe it is the right fit where he's going to be, but that's going to remain to be seen. One team that picked up a goaltender this year, and Chris, you know my line, goaltenders are voodoo. Brandon Bussey with the Carolina Hurricanes has been having an absolutely unreal season. Holds an NHL record now. And he's giving Carolina a reason to maybe start exploring trade options with maybe Frederik Andersen.
Yeah, I mean, I've looked at it, I've written about it, I've gone back and forth with this. I think Frederik Andersen is the piece that has to move. Kochekov's a nice young piece to hold on to, but Brandon Bussey, wow! Like following him last year with Providence, he got claimed off waivers by Florida. I didn't know really not Florida, Jesus. Carolina was curious of what was going to happen with him going forward. And, they had the injury to Kochekov to start the year, or he got called up later on throughout the year. And he's just really run with the role. I mean, he's the first ever NHL goalie to win 10 of his first 11 starts. He's the fastest to 10 wins as a goalie ever. And last night he got the start in a back-to-back against Philly, which I wrote at the bottom of the article about him setting the record. That he was going to play in one of the games this weekend. And can he keep going with what he's done? And last night he got the start and he picked up another win. So now he has 11 wins in his first 12 career starts. It was a shootout win. He stopped 24 of the 26 shots he faced. We talked about Jesper Wallstedt and what he's done for Minnesota. Bussey's numbers aren't up to what Wallstedt's done, but it's hard to not even talk about him now for, the Calder. And it's just been, we talk about Carolina when we did our preview about how they seem like one, and we talked about, I think actually we did In and Out, but they just seem like the best team in the Eastern Conference, top to bottom. And now they have a goalie who's just seemed to taken over the net and just running with it. The 205 goals against average and a 911 save percentage. He recorded his first career shutout, I think, a couple weeks ago. He's so fun to watch in net. He keeps them in games when they're offensively not having their best night. And it's Carolina's honestly like not where they are right now if he's not their goalie. I mean, they're in a playoff spot. We're not going to argue that because their roster is so talented, but they're not leading the Metro right now without Brandon Bussey.
And that's honestly, there's no argument for me on that. Bussey, and like just the way that he's played and kind of really shown up when they needed him to, it's a testament to what he's doing, and it shows what the team has they have the confidence in front of him to play in that manner. And it's scary if you're in the Eastern Conference and you're looking at Carolina. What if they keep Andersen as a number 3 and they run 3 goaltenders all year? Because that becomes that becomes a scary thing, because you have 3 guys who can arguably be a starting goaltender on any team.
I really wouldn't be surprised if that's something they do, just given Kochekov's injury history. I believe he's been out 2 different times this year with an injury. So, I mean, it would not surprise me. And I believe, if I remember correctly, they do rotate. So, like, if Bussey's starting, it's Kochekov, and they rotate who's the backup. And vice versa. Like, if Anderson's starting, it's Bussey in the backup. If Kochekov's starting, it's Bussey as a backup. So, like, that screams to me that Bussey is the guy that they rely on right now. Now, is it a hard start, and that's why they're relying on him, like we talked about with Wallstedt? Maybe. But I think right now he's proving that why Bruins fans for years called for him to be a backup. Every time I write about Brandon Bussey, I share it to Bruins pages, and everybody comments and says Sweeney made a mistake. We should have kept him. And he's proving why.
Yeah, and Bussey, and I believe he was in Florida for a bit, if I'm not wrong, Chris.
Not positive.
Well, anyways, I'm gonna go off you're not positive there, but given what he's, does a team like Carolina look long term if Andersen sticks around and just wants to play with them? What do they do goaltending wise? Do they run 3 guys?
That's my assumption is they would, because, like I said, just with Kochekov's injuries history, they just having the option as a backup and somebody like Frederik Andersen who has the veteran status and has been there before, especially in the playoffs. I certainly could see that.
Oh my God, Chris! You want to know where the Florida tying comes?
Where?
Florida tried to waive him, and Carolina picked him up off of waivers.
Yeah. Okay, that's why I was thinking. I said Florida too, because I said he played for Florida, and I knew there was something with Florida. But then I was spacing myself and thinking Caden Primo, because Caden Primo has been waived so many times, and he's back in the
And
fold.
isn't he in Carolina's system?
I think he's in Chicago. Yeah.
Yeah, he's in Chicago because he played the Moose with the Wolves.
So I'm thinking, that's what was throwing me off.
Yeah, the Moose, they played Chicago 5 times in 7 games, which is really odd for an AHL schedule. And Primo started 4 of the 5 games. So, oh my goodness. That's a crazy waiver claim.
It also throws me so off with Charlotte being Florida's affiliate too. So like I always think of Charlotte and Carolina as affiliates, and then Chicago was the wild card. That throws me off every single time. Like last year, well, I think when we did what was the last time an AHL and NHL affiliate won a cup together? And like I didn't even think of Charlotte at the time because I was like, oh, that's Carolina.
Well, speaking of goalies, Chris, just kind of moving on here. Laurent Brossoit, his 3rd game back after a year and a half away from the game. What an absolutely heartwarming story, not only for him, but just for the team in general. That's absolutely crazy. Your 3rd game back. Brossoit's battled, and he's battled to come back, similar to a lot of guys who've been off for so long. Brossoit scores a goalie goal in his 3rd game back with the Rockford Ice Hogs. I know today he's on waivers, and if he clears, he'll go back to Rockford because he's coming off a conditioning stint. That doesn't happen all the time for goalies, but 3rd game back after a year and a half off, that's got to be encouraging, not only for him, but for the team.
Great goal. I mean, if you haven't seen the video, go find it on X or wherever you can. Beautiful goal. I'm surprised. I'm surprised, but not surprised, I guess, is the way to put it about the whole waiver thing. I get it. He has to go on waivers after being on conditioning stint. But we talked, what was it, last 2 weeks ago, about him possibly being a trade candidate. So, like, now it's any team can just take him. Like, it's, the trade possibility is out the door right now. I don't know if anybody will, but
I think this is going to be a similar thing to Ingram, who was waived by Utah and then traded to Edmonton with some salary retention. Now, it gave Edmonton flexibility because I know a lot of people had mentioned, why wouldn't Edmonton just trade, just claim him, get him for nothing? But it's to have him in the minors already, and you just trade for it. You trade for him at the NHL level, he just goes right to Bakersfield. I'm wondering if this is a similar thing with Brossoit. He just finds his way in the AHL. It also makes me a little curious because do you see a team in the league right now that could use Laurent Brossoit?
I mean, we've talked about goalies multiple times. Teams that could use goalie help multiple times. Could there be a goalie trade? Buffalo.
Yeah.
We talk about the Buffalo logjam. They have so many pieces that they could send off that could be that's just the team that pops in my head right away. Is they could use something like that. It could be a building piece. Somebody with veteran status, but can also help them out. There's so many teams that could use goalie help. Could also use a 3rd goalie. And watching him play the last, his 3 games, he hasn't looked bad. He doesn't look like he lost a step. I mean, getting a goal helps as well, but there's so many different teams. Like I would say Edmonton, obviously, every single time. But now with Jari, they have Pickard, and they still have Ingram.
Yeah,
because Utah be a team that could use them if Vezmelka or Vanacek gets hurt.
But that's the thing is, if Utah wanted to have 3 guys, and I know they kind of set the precedent signing Vanacek that Ingram wasn't going to be in the fold, and he was a little disgruntled there. How does Brossoit fit in? Seeing another veteran was disgruntled already. I know there's obviously other teams. Maybe Anaheim looks at bringing in Brossoit just purely off of veteran presence. having him as a good number 3. I look at other teams around the league, and maybe Toronto goes veteran presence there. I know he was linked to go there when he was a free agent a couple of summers back. And just look at teams that aren't too cap strapped that could use a third goaltender. I know when Winnipeg, and we'll talk about Winnipeg and their goaltending problems later and how they're looking like themselves again, but I know people had said that Brossoit would be a good pickup because he's familiar with Winnipeg, but then my argument with that was, what do they do with Comrie? I'll get into that, like I said, but Brossoit, it doesn't seem like there's a landing spot that's very apparent at the moment.
I got one. Actually, I got 2.
Okay.
Sharks.
Okay.
Nedeljkovic has kind of struggled. Askarov has looked like the guy, but they don't have a number 3 that they can rely on. The other one that comes to my head, and it comes with the injuries, is Vancouver. Demko's missed time multiple seasons. That, yes, they're not winning this season, but it's a piece they could add in goal that could help them moving forward, whether it's just with the injury history. Like right now, I think it's I got the flashing Connor again.
Ain't no motherfucking way that is happening. With Vancouver using the hard R in rebuild, there is no way that they are going to look to make acquisitions in net unless, they're trading off a Brock Besser to a team and they're getting a young goaltending prospect plus a pick plus a roster player in return as part of that. San Jose, completely different area of where they're at in competition. I don't think they're going to look to add unless it's a significant long-term fit. They're not interested in a third goalie to help keep them competitive. They're either in or they're out, and they're happy with either. It's house money if they make the playoffs with a young roster, and it's yay, rah, rah, go team. We get another high pick if we lose. They're not there yet. Another couple years, they might be in the market for the third goalie.
Which is exactly why I said I don't see a number 1 fit right now. So, and that's not to completely shit on your parade here, Chris, but like Brossoit, I can see him being in the minors for a little bit, and maybe a team that has a bit of injury troubles at the moment that might come up over the next couple weeks, 3 weeks, a month, who knows. Maybe there is that need to bring him in, even if it's short term, and try to get him back down. Because realistically, a year and a half off, having knee and hip surgeries, those are not minor surgeries.
Nope.
Like it's not like he spent 3-4 weeks off. It's a year and a half that he was out of the game. So teams are going to be skeptical bringing in a veteran goaltender who has an injury history that Brossoit has. He could be maybe he comes, maybe he clears tomorrow, and maybe he goes down and he just lights up the AHL. Maybe it becomes a need for a team to bring him in. And I look at it as it's just the question of if he can get back to that level. So, here we are, Chris. Brossoit, goalie goal is great, but the need for a goaltender, it's not very apparent for him. But like I said, maybe 1,000 times this last little bit here, it's all about the need for goaltending, the demand in the market. It seems like the demand has dipped lately, but there's always a team that could be searching, but it's just not too clear at the moment. So I look at, just kind of moving on here, Chris, I look at a team like the Islanders and what they're doing as a team, and looking at their whole situation, they could be a problem. The Metro, they're tossing it up. They're making things a little bit hard for other teams. Matthew Schaefer has come in and looked absolutely phenomenal. I honestly would say is with this performance across 33 games and counting, he could he could easily put himself in a conversation of awards right away. That's the kind of level he's played.
Right now, I personally would have him in the top 3 for the Norris. I mean, that there's no way about it. And the fact that they're still doing all of this, and I mean, what are they, 6-1 in December? They're doing it without Kyle Palmieri, who has the ACL injury, and Bo Horvat, I believe, missed the last game, if not last couple games. Like, they're losing pieces, and they're just filling it in, and they're still winning games. Like, they beat the Lightning 3 times this month already. They beat Colorado, who we've talked about is honestly one of the best teams in hockey. They beat Vegas. Like, they're not beating bad teams to get to this stretch. They've beaten Tampa Bay 3 times, division leader, Colorado, division leader, Anaheim and Vegas, who have flip-flopped, each division leader. That's their wins. It's not a cakewalk. It's being 6-1 the way they have is proving that they're a team to worry about. And Ilya Sorokin looks like he could be a player that you put in the Vezina conversation.
Yeah.
You know, the David Riddick fit as a backup has been solid for them as well. And this is a team that I think is finding scoring in different ways. They look great defensively. You know, I believe it's Schaefer and Pulak is a pair. It's Pelech, one of the two. I get those two confused.
Yeah.
But they've found a fit right there. They're a fun team to watch. They have the Red Wings tomorrow night, so I'm hoping somehow they get cooled off. Maybe even just talking about them tonight, they get cooled off and we do our curse thing. But
oh no,
I mean,
I had a
don't
buddy.
know.
Just a little side thought on that. At work today, I had a friend who listens to the podcast. He goes, "Man, every time you talk about a team being red hot, they go on an absolute shitter for the next week."
And of course, let's look at the Islanders' schedule this week. They got the Red Wings at Detroit, they got the Canucks, and they got Buffalo. One thing about putting a team in a curse, if they go 0-3 this week, we really might need the shirts. Connor wants us to talk about the Bruins being red hot. They're dominant right now. Keep doing what you're doing. A 6-2 loss last night. You guys look great. Keep rolling.
At this rate, we're going to have to get merch, Chris. You need the ITR curse shirt, and I need the Goalies Are Voodoo shirt. So,
but I mean, again, going back to the Islanders, this team, surprising, yes, because I don't think either of us had them in a playoff spot when we did our preview. But I don't know if I really maybe this week they are cursed, but I don't know if I really see this team falling out of a playoff spot right now, the way they played.
Yeah, and and I mentioned Schaefer a lot, but this is also the core of this team that is coming together, and what they've added over time. They look like a team that has kind of patiently went through the motions, got the first overall pick, and it was one and done. It doesn't look like they're going to be back in the lottery conversation.
I talk about the Sharks a lot in this podcast, or any team really in the Pacific Division, I think. The California teams, I guess. But could you imagine if the Sharks had Matthew Schaefer?
Oh my God.
About them right now?
I had this conversation around the draft time, and I had a friend say to me, just the team and the build, do you see Schaefer going first overall? And there was a lot of hesitancy because of the Islanders' situation with defensemen having Dobson at the time and Dobson getting traded. And nope, there was no hesitancy after Dobson was traded, and 2, the Islanders had a very clear goal in mind with the draft, and that was to bring in the most impactful player that was available, and that was Schaefer. You look at all the other guys and what they've done so far in the draft, it's not to the level of what Matthew Schaefer has done with the Islanders. I'm going to say that a lot, obviously, but coming in, you said it, Chris, right. He could be top 3 in the Norris. That's where he's positioned himself. Now imagine 4 to 5 years from now, when Matthew Schaefer is come into his own, still young in the league, but he's still developing. Imagine that level of Matthew Schaefer in the NHL, because he's only going to get better as time goes on. When he's done his entry level, he's going to be probably one of the highest paid defensemen, arguably, or in the top 5, because you don't know what Makar, Hughes, what they're going to get. Where do you look at the Islanders 4 years from now? Sure, even 15, 16, 20, those are good picks if they get bounced in the first round. They get a 20th overall pick. Those are not bad picks to get.
I think they need to get young up front, but in 4 years, if they get young up front and they get those 4 pieces, I mean, if they get young up front in 4 years, Jesus, they're going to be a tough team to play. But see, my issue with them is watching their AHL affiliate. I don't see anything down there that's coming that screams to me, this is a savior. Like we could talk about like somebody like the Rangers, where you see Gabe Perreault as somebody who can come up and help this team or that team relatively quickly. But for the Islanders aspect, to me, this team relies solely on their veteran leadership. Kind of like, I mean, you could say that about the Ducks, but like we talk about the Ducks and they have the veteran leadership and the young pieces. The Islanders, I don't see that right now other than Schaefer. And maybe that's a couple years away. Maybe you are right. Maybe in 4 years, this team is terrifying. But right now I'm seeing what they're doing. Hot stretch. Love what's going on with that. Long season though. It's December. We still got 4 more months, and realistically there is a break in there. So 3.5, I guess, 3 months.
Yeah.
So where are they going to be at come conversation after the Olympic break? Maybe we do another in and out at the Olympic break and see who's in the playoffs and decide really where do we stand on these teams, because I mean the race is still close. Like I don't see it being really getting separated.
And that's a very good point to make, Chris. The other thing I want to bring up, and we were talking about teams that are good, other teams that have slipped over the last 3 weeks here. The Winnipeg Jets without Hellebuck did not look great. They didn't look like they were structured. Whereas the Islanders, they've lost key veteran pieces in their lineup, and they still have structure. The Jets without their MVP winning goaltender were not structured. They had a lot of discipline issues, and now at the time of recording, they're up 2-1 on the Ottawa Senators. I was at the Bruins game, and I was at the game where Hellebuck came back. I went with friends and just went there. It was a nice low-key night. Chris, the absolute difference in quality of product played by the Winnipeg Jets was astounding, and the only difference in the lineup was who was in net. They made no changes in their lineup from the Boston loss to the Washington win. And I think it's because of the confidence that having a 2-time or back-to-back defending Vezina winner, Hart defending goaltender, the resume speaks for itself with Hellebuck, and this is a team that relies on their goaltender, and we've seen it, and it almost just solidifies why he was the guy who won the Hart last season.
And that's, I mean, kind of what I said last week was, I don't know if I got you a little angry about it, but I said, the defense looks lost. And I said, they don't and then you came right back and you said, this is a team that was in the top of the league last year in defensive categories. And they weren't. This year, they're not without Connor Hellebuck. It proves to you what one player can make a huge difference.
Yep.
And Hellebuck comes back, like you said, 5-1 win last night or on Saturday night, and they're up 2-1 right now. And watching the game on Saturday a little bit, they overall look completely different. Even the forwards, it was almost like him coming back gave the whole roster a confidence. And like you said, that's a reason why you are a Hart winner. You are a MVP for a reason. He is hands down the best goalie in hockey. The Jets go as Connor Hellebuck goes.
Yep.
And we'll get to it in I'm going to assume a couple minutes, but now with the door kind of open again, we talked about a couple weeks ago, Hellebuck being out is the door open for other teams in that division to slide in and take the third spot or a wild card spot from Winnipeg. Now, Minnesota adding Quinn Hughes might give them that boost to take the 3 spot, but Connor Hellebuyck being back very certainly entertains the conversation of Winnipeg being a wildcard team, but also being a team that, if in a wildcard spot, could send the Colorado Avalanche home in the first round.
And speaking of wildcard spot, the Winnipeg Jets, with 3 games in hand on Utah, they are 4 points back and 1 game in hand on Chicago. They're 1 point back of the 2 possible wildcard spots, just chasing in the Central. I know they are. They have 2 games in hand on Edmonton and 2 on San Jose. The other 2 candidates for wildcard spots as of right now. You look at also, if you want to get into third, Chris, Minnesota has 43 points on the season as of right now. That is a 12-point gap, and you only have 2 games in hand on the Minnesota Wild. Not a good stretch that they had without Hellebuyck. 12 games. I believe they were 10-2 or something along those lines. Or pardon me, 2-10-2 or
they weren't
2-8-2. Pardon me.
They
weren't good. Yes. Having these conversations and whatnot with a lot of people, like in the sphere of like Jets and whatnot. This is a team that if they hit a 8-game winning stretch, that conversation for third becomes completely different. And the one thing, I was talking to Nick Lynham, he hosts a call-in post-game show and whatnot, and I had talked to him over the phone today, and he said to me, the one thing that teams need to be looking at, sure, Hellebuyck was out for 3 weeks, but he does not have a shutout yet. That should frighten teams, because if he cranks on the Jets, no pun intended there, that could be game-changing for Winnipeg if he posts multiple shutouts.
I'm going to look. I pulled it up because you started pulling off how many games in hand and all that stuff. This 5 games is absolutely massive for them. They have the Blues, the Avalanche, the Mammoth, the Wild, and the Oilers. 4 of those teams they're behind. If you can come out of that with 8 out of 10, or even, I'd go as far as to say, maybe we can agree here, 7 out of 10?
8 out of 10.
8 out of 10. I love it. If you come out of 8 out of 10 points in that stretch, you're right back in the conversation for that wild card spot. The big 2 games are Colorado and Minnesota. Now, the thing I like about the Minnesota game is they have almost a week off between their last game to that game, where you're allowing somebody like Connor Hellebuyck, who's coming off a injury that you hopefully doesn't flare up again because this team falls off completely without him, like we just talked about. Mm-hmm. You give him a week off, you let him rest a little bit, he comes back and he faces the Wild. That's huge. That's a huge boost. So,
and that shutout thing is so important to point out, because this is way too late in the season for Hellebuyck to not have a shutout.
I'm going to make a guarantee.
Uh-oh.
Connor Hellebuyck gets in a shutout in the next 5 games.
Okay, that's fair.
Absolutely. I mean, realistically, getting the Blues on Wednesday night at home, or at St. Louis, that might be the shutout, because St. Louis is not that great. But I think Connor Hellebuyck gets a shutout in the next 5 games.
I almost want to say, Chris, if Hellebuyck gets a shutout on a team that is ahead of them, that's more important than getting one on St. Louis.
I'll even double it down. I will bet money that Connor Hellebuyck gets a shutout in any of these next 5 games. Every single game that I see him starting, I will put a bet in that he gets a shutout that night.
All right.
I did it once a couple of years ago. We were in my buddy's house, and literally Jeremy Swayman, I think it was against Ottawa. This was like years ago. I think it was Jeremy Swayman's first year on the Bruins. And I literally was just sitting down there. I was like, you know what? I'm up today. I'm up big. I've won a lot of money. For fun, I'm just going to put a Jeremy Swayman to get a shutout tonight. And sure enough, he did. Just random one. So just going out on a limb here. Maybe my gambling thoughts aren't my curse, and it's just me talking about random teams. But we'll find out, I guess. And we got, 2 weeks? So we can bring it up next week if he hasn't had one. I got, 2 more games before we record again for another shutout chance?
Yeah. That's pretty bold, but I'll support you on it. Chris, Connor
shutout won't
Bedard
be
out
New
till
Year's Eve.
January.
The
Oh,
shutout
New
will be-
Year's Eve, you're saying?
Yeah, it won't be. It will not be New Year's Eve. I'm telling you that right now.
Okay.
Winnipeg's at Detroit, so it's not happening.
Okay. All right. I love it. All right. The final topic that we have on the list here, Chris. Connor Bedard out till January. Takes a cross check from Braden Chen that didn't look like there was anything terrible right off of it, but holding his shoulder and whatnot. Not good news considering he's having a monster season.
It depends who you're a fan of, because I've seen a lot of Blackhawks fans saying it was a dirty hit. And I really, honestly, watching the video, being unbiased, I didn't think there was anything wrong with it. It was a play on the puck on the face-off with 0.6 seconds left. I'm curious what this means for his Olympic chances. I mean, I don't know. Their roster's coming, I believe, saw New Year's Eve. I think they're announcing the roster. Back by January, that shouldn't hurt his chances to make the team, especially with how he's had the season he's had. But him being a player that they're having conversations about with other players and the seasons they're having, it might hurt. I mean, it's a tough stretch for them coming up too.
And
the
one thing about it. Go ahead.
I talked about it. This is we just said it with Winnipeg. This is them losing Bedard is such a massive loss for them that this could open the door for Winnipeg to slide up, take their spot, and even compete with the Sharks and the Oilers for that wild card spot.
Took the words out of my mouth, but the last thing I'm going to say on this Bedard thing is it's going to cause a bit of chaos in their lineup because you cannot replace his caliber of player. That's a guy who he's everywhere, Chris. He's the number one guy. He's the star.
Nothing against him, but we just finished their preview for tomorrow night as they're facing the Maple Leafs, and doing their line combinations from what Daily Faceoff has, and seeing Frank Nazar as the number one center. Just nothing against Nazar, like I said, but just seeing that, it just feels like such a different roster. This is a team that, doing a lot of their previews this season and doing their line combinations, they've come out with a lot of 11-7, like I said, like Nashville did, and they were winning games with that. They were a very but losing somebody like Bedard, and if they do try to 11-7 without Bedard even in the lineup, I don't know where they're finding their scoring from without him in the lineup. Bertuzzi's had a great season. He's been fun to watch. You see somebody like Colton Dock, who on the fourth line has provided some offense on the bottom six. Defensively, they've been fun to watch. I think their goaltending is their biggest thing. Without Bedard, they need Spencer Knight and Soderblom to be otherworldly. Otherwise, it's going to be a big downfall, and they might find themselves in St. Louis Blues, Nashville Predators territory by the time Bedard comes back.
Yeah, and we're going to see how that plays out. You kind of hit the nail on the head there. But Chris, until next week, a lot of hockey to talk about even then. Thank you for listening, and we will see you back next Monday.
Have a great week, everyone. Who knows what trades happen now?